The House took a historic vote today to endorse the impeachment inquiry into President Trump and set out rules for the next stage of the process. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. This was the first time the full House voted on the current impeachment inquiry into Trump. It's a day that he has long dreaded, and you can tell because the further along impeachment got, the more he started to freak out.
The president tweeted that the, quote, do-nothing Democrats should be focused on building up our country. He said not wasting everyone's time and energy on, all caps, bull.
They can't win on election day, so they're pursuing an illegal, invalid, and unconstitutional bull impeachment.
The angrier Trump gets, the more he sounds like a cab driver from Queens. You want me to take you to LaGuardia at 4 p.m.? This is bull. Keep walking. Get an Uber. Also, I like when you can tell which words were written for Trump and which ones he added. All right, Mr. President, here's the script. We're going to call it illegal, invalid, and unconstitutional. Okay, yeah, that's good. I might add one word. Is it a bad word? No. Donald, if it's a bad word, you have to put $1 in the swear jar. What? I thought if I swear, I get to take $1 out of the swear jar. This is bull. That's what you owe me. So Trump was clearly dreading this vote, and yet, even as late as this morning, his advisors were still insisting the Democrats would fail. White House counselor Kellyanne Conway went on Fox News and claimed that she had some inside dirt on the impeachment process.
Impeachment is simple math. You either have the votes or you don't. And guess what? Dirty little secret, they don't have the votes.
Kellyanne Conway definitely seems like someone who spent high school sharing dirty little secrets. She should be standing by a locker whispering, Jackie's boyfriend told Jeff's sister, who told Dana's cousin, who told Mike's cousin, who told Sophie's mom, who told Jason's mom, who told Danny's prom date that guess what? They don't have no mom. But there you go. Kellyanne Conway says Democrats don't have the votes to impeach Trump, and if that's the case, then surely they wouldn't have the votes for today's resolution.
A historic vote just held in the House of Representatives. The Democratic-controlled Congress voting to move ahead with the impeachment inquiry.
House Democrats and one independent lawmaker passing a resolution laying out the impeachment process by an overwhelming majority.
On this vote, the yeas are 232. The nays are 196.
What? We can't trust Kellyanne Conway? I guess up is up and down is down. And for her part, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi played it cool and made clear the whole time she was confident she had the votes. In fact, right before she presided over the vote, she spoke to reporters, and at the end of her press conference, she coyly teased what she was about to do.
As you may understand, I have business on the floor that I have to see to, so I'm going to have to excuse myself. Thank you all very much.
Damn. That's like in an action movie when Tom Cruise says something like, sorry, this is my stop, and then jumps out of an airplane. And while Pelosi was playing it cool, Trump and his allies, of course, were freaking out. In fact, Trump is so desperate and so wildly grasping at straws that this morning he just blurted out an all-caps tweet about his infamous phone call with the president of Ukraine that just said, read the transcript. Yeah, we did. That's how we found out about the crimes you committed. Trump's like a bank robber who screams, watch the tape! Then the jury watches the tape, and it's just him smiling straight in the camera holding up a bag of cash. Then, later in the morning, Trump tweeted again, this time even more desperate and trying out an even dumber argument. He tweeted, the impeachment hoax is hurting our stock market. The do-nothing Democrats don't care. That has nothing to do with impeachment. There's no secret footnote in the Constitution that says the president shall be removed from office for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, unless it's bad for the stock market, in which case, cool it. And Trump was not the only one at a loss for how to respond to the impeachment vote today. Take Republican Congressman Devin Nunes, who complained about all the damning testimony Democrats have heard from witnesses. Democrats have been holding those depositions in a secure room at the Capitol known as the SCIF, and Nunes called those hearings a cult.
What we're seeing among Democrats on the Intelligence Committee down in the SCIF right now is like a cult. These are a group of people loyally following their leader as he bounces from one outlandish conspiracy theory to another.
You're calling Democrats a cult? Donald Trump looks like something that was summoned by a cult. In fact, Trump wasn't actually born. He just appeared one day in the middle of a pentagram. Who has summoned me? And was she hot? Was she like a 10? I don't like being summoned by anything less than a 10. I'll go right back to hell right now. But that wasn't even the dumbest thing Republicans said before the vote, because as always, they also had dumb posters. Congressman Steve Scalise, for example, brought out a giant poster to accuse the Democrats of acting like Soviets for following a procedure laid out by the founders in the Constitution.
This is unprecedented. It's not only unprecedented, this is Soviet-style rules. Maybe in the Soviet Union, you do things like this, where only you make the rules. Madam Speaker, when you look through this resolution and you see how one-sided, how Soviet-style this is running.
I mean, it looks like the cover of a board game. I feel so bad for the intern who had to run to Kinko's and print that out. Look how janky that thing is. How did that conversation go? Hey, I need a giant poster board of this. Oh, is it for your child's history class? No. It's for my congressman. But at least that guy brought a visual aid. Republican Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy tried to use his words, but he said something so confusing that it was nearly impossible to follow his logic.
This is the moment that history will write. History will ask you when you cast this vote, when you cast a vote to justify something that has gone on behind closed doors, I want you to ask the historian and answer the question. What do you know that happened there?
What? What are you saying? History will write this moment, and then history will ask you a question, so you want them to ask the historian a question and then answer the questions themselves? Sounds like you asked Siri to read a quote from Alexander Hamilton after spilling water on your phone. Siri, read me a passage from the Federalist Papers.
History will write this moment, and then history will ask you a question, and then you should ask the historian a question, and then the historian will answer it.
Today's vote was obviously a historic moment and a huge blow to Trump and his supporters. The House has now formally endorsed the impeachment inquiry, and that's because the basic facts of what happened are indisputable. Trump orchestrated a vast scheme in which he dangled hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid to Ukraine in order to get that country to dig up dirt on his political rivals. And key witnesses over the last few weeks have confirmed key details of what happened, including new testimony today from a top national security official. And now Democrats are planning on calling Trump's ex-national security advisor, John Bolton, to testify in a few weeks. Now, you might remember that when Bolton found out about the Ukraine quid pro quo led by Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, Bolton reportedly told people at the White House, Giuliani's a hand grenade who's going to blow everybody up. Rudy's not a hand grenade. He's the guy who walks into a room holding the pin. Oh, Rudy, what'd you do? Did you guys see a little metal baseball? So Bolton wanted no part of the Ukraine quid pro quo. In fact, you might also remember that one of Trump's hand-picked ambassadors, Gordon Sondland, and his acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, were both central in orchestrating the quid pro quo with Ukraine. And when he found out, Bolton reportedly said, I'm not part of whatever drug deal Sondland and Mulvaney are cooking up. And even if you did want to be a part of it, I'm not sure I trust these guys to cook up a drug deal. They look like the only drugs they've taken are the kind you see in commercials with middle-aged couples walking on beaches together. If Mulvaney's called to testify about his drug deal, the hearing will probably be sponsored by one of those drugs.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your time and for the opportunity to be here.
So Bolton obviously has a lot to say, and on top of that, he left the Trump administration on very bad terms. Bolton, like almost every other Trump aide before him, was unceremoniously dumped last month after clashing with Trump. And as usual, Trump couldn't help but diss Bolton on his way out the door.
He made some very big mistakes. You know, John's known as a tough guy. He's so tough he got us into Iraq. That's tough. And, you know, John wasn't in line with what we were doing. And actually, in some cases, he thought it was too tough what we were doing. Mr. Tough Guy, you know, you have to go into Iraq. Going into Iraq was something that he felt very strongly about, and I disagreed with that decision from the beginning. I thought it was a terrible mistake. And that's not a question of being tough. That's a question of being not smart. So I wish John the best.
It doesn't sound like you do. You can't just end a long rant about how he's an idiot by tacking on, I wish him the best. That would be like slipping a note cut out from magazine letters under his door that said, I'm going to murder you in your sleep. Warmest regards, your dear friend Donald. Obviously, there's a lot of bad blood there, but the best part is all these are awful guys. Bolton's an unrepentant warmonger. Trump, of course, is Trump. So it's fun to watch them turn on each other and try to take each other down. I don't like watching nature shows where a lion kills a baby antelope, but when they show a spider and a scorpion going at it, I am in. So the actual facts of what happened are indefensible. There's nothing Republicans can say to defend what Trump did. That's why they're focused instead on the process. They've been whining for weeks about how Democrats have been conducting the initial depositions behind closed doors, even though a lot of them are allowed in those hearings. In fact, this week, CNN asked Republican Congressman Ted Yoho if he had attended any of the impeachment hearings. There was even a deposition going on while he was on TV, and the anchor asked him why he wasn't there.
You could attend all of these depositions. Have you attended a single one?
No, I haven't gone to those
But why are you not there?
because I have other responsibilities in the House.
Respectfully, Congressman, as glad as I am that you're on this show, you don't need to be on this show. You could be in
Well,
there.
like I said, I've
you
got
could be
my
in there
questions written
deposing.
down. I plan to go in there. I've got my questions written for him.
So you are going to this deposition after you're off the air with us. Is that
As
right?
soon as I'm off the air, yes, ma'am.
I don't think so. I mean, based on that, I bet he didn't actually have any questions written down. I got my questions right here. Okay, can you read some of them? Yeah, you bet. I don't have any questions. Today was a historic day and a major step forward in the impeachment process. Republicans can't defend Trump on the substance, and they can't complain about the process. So now all they have left is bull. This has been a closer look.